Hello, everyone. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Thank
Great.
you.
Well, want to thank those who are joining the webinar today. We're doing a webinar on boundaries, and we'll start off with introductions. My name is Kelsey Wilson. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in Virginia, and I'm also licensed in DC, and I run a private practice for BIPOC women, and we'll soon be adding couples therapy and mother and adult daughter services as well with a new clinician that's going to be joining. So happy to be here today, and I'll pass it to Rhea to introduce herself.
Thank you. My name is Rhaea Goff. I own a group practice here in Alexandria, Virginia called Rhaea Hope. We're a multidisciplinary group practice where we all specialize in something different from trauma therapy, relational therapy. We have a certified financial social worker. But the thing that brings us together is we help individuals live authentic and fulfilling lives.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Joseph Fruth. I am a clinical social worker and queer psychotherapist licensed in the state of Virginia. I run a small private practice that is going full time in the new year. So I'm going to be accepting new clients here in 2026. And I specialize in working with folks across the gender spectrum who have experienced a lot of invalidation or feeling misunderstood and have a history of traumatic experiences. Welcome.
Hey.
Well, we're all so glad to be here today. And one of the reasons why we wanted to do this boundaries webinar is because it's a big part of the work that we do in private practice. We help a lot of people with navigating boundaries with family, with work, with their personal lives. And so we'll be talking about that a little bit today, also providing some resources and some takeaways for those who are watching the webinar. So I'll just kick it off with getting started and talking about what boundaries are. So boundaries are about how you move in relationships, ways you can be assertive without, you know, stonewalling or being passive or like attacking others. And there's a lot of ways that you can navigate boundaries, and we're also going to talk about some cultural considerations to kind of take into account. Um, and so sometimes it's good to get a glimpse of how your therapist kind of views boundaries, especially if there are some cultural considerations that you want to take into account. So we'll kind of talk about that a little bit today too. Um, have you all ever worked with any clients who had any cultural considerations when they were coming into therapy and wanting to talk about boundaries?
Absolutely. I think there are folks I've worked with across cultures who their family dynamics are such that boundaries can be a really polarized or complex topic around sense of obligation to parents, especially aging parents, dynamics between siblings, where we always, as therapists who work with clients across cultures, want to be considerate and respectful to the importance of these relationships, an adult child with an adult parent, or maybe there's a history of some conflict and other dynamics that have just caused distress. We always want to be respectful that that relationship matters, and we don't ever want to say anything disparaging or kind of demeaning of that relationship. Being really mindful of different approaches to those relationships across cultures, and yeah.
I agree. I think everybody should implement boundaries. It is
Hmm.
a healthy way we navigate relationships. And also, it looks different on everybody.
Yeah.
So just think, I might say things that's within my cultural norms. And culture could be race, culture could be
Hmm.
within my family or my circle of people. And
Yep.
so when I might say things to this group of people, it might look different in a different setting.
Hmm.
Or when working with clients, I take in consideration their upbringing, their actual other cultural dynamics that they have, and what's the best way that honors who they are, but also sets boundaries with people, places, and things. Because boundaries is with people, but it could be with how we manage our materialistic possessions and how we borrow things for people and
Yes.
different things like that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think boundaries are a tool. Like I think um, people can often or sometimes see them as this very black or white thing of like if you do this, the relationship is over, and it doesn't have to be that, right? Like boundaries can kind of help us cultivate a relationship and move within. I think Kelsey, as you said, move within the relationship more effectively in a way that preserves our self-respect as well as like respect of the other person. Being really mindful in boundary setting to not kind of weaponize boundaries again as setting ultimatums. Like if you do this, I'm gonna leave. Like boundaries are about us and what we are and are not okay with. Um, and of course, just want to make a note here to caveat for safety. If there's a dynamic in which there's any sort of domestic violence or egregious abuse, like that may be a bit of a different conversation where safety comes before interpersonal boundary setting skills. So I just wanted to caveat for that before we got too far into this.
Yeah. And I think for those who have maybe like gone through therapy before and maybe worked with a therapist in the past that maybe had like a Western approach to like how boundaries should be carried out. Sometimes like when they're starting with a new therapist, that might be something that comes up for them, like, oh, in the past when I tried to work on boundaries in therapy, maybe some of the solutions were to like kind of cut back from spending time with family or cut back from spending time with friends. But I think one of the things that we want to make sure we touch on in this webinar is like we don't have to go no contact with people to set
Yes.
boundaries. Like we can try a collaborative approach. Like you can start with just expressing like, hey, in the past I used to be okay with this, but now moving forward, this is kind of what I would want and this is what I expect. And then sometimes boundaries are going to get tested, right? So
Hmm.
if people are used to you being okay with certain things and then you change your mind and you want to start to assert boundaries, sometimes people are going to push back against it. And that doesn't mean that we have to go no contact at that. You can reiterate what your boundary is. And then if people aren't respecting your boundary, you can come back to therapy and we can talk about a way to approach making sure that they understand your boundaries. And it's also about working on assertiveness too, so that people
Yes.
it's not an optional boundary. This is something that you actually are going to hold to.
I agree. And then I think about when you come to therapy and we're having conversations or boundaries or anything you're processing in therapy, your therapist is giving you suggestions or different tools. And what we
Hmm.
have to do is tweak it to aligns with who we are, our personality, and our situation. So just because your therapist says, go have a conversation with them, or you should do this. And sometimes we pick up that tool just as it is and we go
Hmm.
implement it and we get frustrated with our therapist or how the process of therapy is going because it did not yield the results that you were hoping for. So what if we have a suggestion and you sit with it and tweak it to in a situation that aligns in a way that aligns with you and aligns with the situation that you're addressing. So it's like not one size fit all when it comes to
Hmm.
tools. And then another thing that came up for me is like some boundaries are spoken and unspoken.
Hmm.
And so there's some things that I'm going to speak to people and said, hey, I don't appreciate the way you're speaking to me and your tone, or I'm going to push back with X, Y, and Z. And then my boundary may be I'm going out with friends and they may be going out till 3 o'clock in the morning. And I might say to myself, I know I have plans the next day. So my boundary is I'm going to go out and support, but I'm going to leave at a certain amount of time. So I don't have to speak that out. That's a boundary I set before I left. And you can explain it to the person may not understand, but that's something that's for you.
Absolutely. And you can, as you just said, explain like, hey, if your friend says to you, hey, why are you leaving so early? Like, oh, and explain. And also you go in setting that limit with yourself
Correct.
and just kind of expecting to say goodnight a couple hours earlier. And so, yeah, there are certain times in which we may feel like we owe someone an explanation, and it could be helpful to explore where that comes from and what that's about for each person if you feel that way often when you're trying to set a limit or boundary. I think something else that came up for me as you were talking, Rhea, was this idea of like the cookie cutter. Like it's not, right? It's not cookie cutter, one size fits all. And there are things we can ask ourselves to decide how much should I modulate my intensity with this boundary, right? Like how firm is it effective for me to be? Questions like, what are my priorities for the situation? Are my priorities getting to bed at a reasonable hour? I have stuff to do the next day. Is my self-respect at stake? If I don't set this limit, will I feel crummy about myself and feel like I didn't act in a way that's aligned with my values? If yes, maybe I'm a little more firm or a little more intense with how I set the limit. And I don't mean intense in a way that's attacking or stonewalling, just kind of firm.
Mhm.
Um, are my rights at stake if I don't set this boundary or this limit with myself, with this relationship? Are my human rights going to be jeopardized in jeopardy? And if yes, maybe I again kind of turn that modulation dial up a notch. And so that was coming up for me as you were talking, that we don't go into every situation saying, I don't do this, I don't like when you do this, you need to stop doing this. We modulate our intensity all the time, and that is a skill that is kind of always be in practice, right?
Look, we don't have to be so aggressive. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like we learned this new skill. Have you ever seen, and I know I'm guilty of doing this too. So I use myself as an example. I learned this new skill and I'm so excited to implement it. Like, oh, let me show you. I got this new skill. I'm going to show you all the things. And we come across so aggressive. I'm like, oh, and everybody's looking like, oh, and you think it's because they didn't set my boundaries. It's how we present the boundaries.
Mhm.
And we're
Right.
still taken aback of like, okay, I love this for you. And also there's ways to communicate. We don't have to
Yes.
start off at a 10.
Yes.
There's some things we have to recognize. We have allowed these behaviors for X amount of time, and you just didn't know better. And there's
Yeah.
no need for you to beat up on yourself or put yourself down for it. You've learned something new. You're taking the skill, but we don't have to come in there like the Incredible Hulk. It's smash stuff and say like, "Oh my God, let me tell you all the things." It's just like,
Right.
okay, now just state it. And I know you're
Yeah.
anxious. I know you're probably like, bleh, let me just get it out. You have diarrhea in the mouth, and we're just saying it, but just sit in the discomfort. And I think
Yeah.
that's like part of the emotional regulation, that we want everything to be easy or come with ease.
Yeah.
But when you're doing something, you're stretching yourself.
Mhm.
You are growing, and with that comes discomfort. So we're going to have to be like, I am uncomfortable, yet I'm going to say it, but we don't have to be aggressive with saying it.
Right.
Sure.
And two, like the pendulum swing to the other side where we don't say anything and expect the person to somehow know that we're not okay with what they're doing, or that we want more of what they just did if we don't speak on it. And again, not like the Incredible Hulk necessarily every time. If we don't speak on it, the other person or persons can't know. The environment can't know that we want more or less of something. And some of us, just to your point, Rhea, about the discomfort, like it's so uncomfortable to make those things explicit that gosh, I wish they could just read my mind. I'm gonna sit here with a furrowed brow and my arms crossed and hope that they know what I know somehow magically, what I want more or less of. And again, it's a practice. It's yeah.
Yeah. And I also want to add too, like, especially with me working with a lot of women with intergenerational trauma,
Yeah.
growing up in households where maybe your parents didn't teach you how to communicate a boundary, or you had a lot of emotional dysregulation in the household. And so it's like, how do I now navigate having healthy relationships with
Yeah.
and stating a boundary in a way that's just expressing what my need is,
Yes.
the anxiety taking over without the anger, or the sad feelings taking over, when you didn't have that modeled for you when you were growing up. It's kind of a challenge to do that. And so that's where therapy
Absolutely.
kind of really steps in, because you can work with your therapist on doing kind of like a role play of how you might want to go about saying it,
Yes.
and then kind of checking, okay, how did that feel, just to say it out loud. And working on building your social circle a little bit with people who will accept your boundaries and not get upset or leave because you set a boundary.
Yeah.
That's really healing.
Yes. I love what you said about sometimes like the emotional intensity, like the anger, the anxiety can kind of be like a runaway train, and we can kind of get sidetracked. And just using Rhea's example about the night out, right? Like if we try to leave, at midnight instead of 3 a.m. and a friend comes to us and says, "Oh my gosh, why are you leaving? Are you mad at me?" And tries to pull the conversation into all these different directions. It's our invitation, right, to just kind of stay mindful on just the limit, like without necessarily all this other stuff that is valid and could use some maybe unpacking at a different point. Just kind of staying mindful and just, hey, I gotta get home. I got an early start tomorrow, and kind of just keeping it there in a way that, again, is gentle, is respectful. And if there's an insistence, which I think, Kelsey, you were talking about a few moments ago, like to bend your boundary, maybe that's another invitation to dial the intensity up just a little bit, to say, I really got to get home, and just kind of stick to it. And just that, right?
Absolutely.
Over here, over here, over here.
Yeah. And I was just going to add, sometimes like over explaining is a trauma response,
Yeah.
to people pleasing, because
Yeah.
I feel like we have to justify why we set a boundary or why we made a certain decision. And I just want to say, like, it's okay to just like say, this is what my decision is.
Mm-hmm.
And if they need a little bit of explanation, you provide it, but don't feel the need to like over explain after you've asserted a boundary.
Absolutely.
One of the activities I like to do with my clients is, why do we share the things that we share? Purpose
Love
of
that
us sharing.
question.
And it just could be in general. Are we sharing things for be performative, to be seen or contort ourselves to be seen in different light? Are we sharing things because I generally want you to know this about me?
Yeah.
And are we sharing things because I want you to like me, the people pleasing part of it?
Yeah.
And so it becomes very complex. And, we live in a society where everybody's on social media, everybody has a mic, everybody shares everything. I've seen a whole lot of stuff. I'm like, oh, this is where we are now.
Right.
So the world has given you permission to
Mhm.
show up and share whatever you want to share. But what is your boundary and why are we sharing these things? And a lot of the stuff, it's rooted in people pleasing or performative behavior, which aligns with people pleasing, of wanting to be seen in a certain light
Yep.
versus genuinely who we are.
Yeah. Seen and therefore wanted, chosen, desired, belonging, right?
Correct.
For so many folks who come to see, I think at least us here, there's that real desire for belonging and a lot of experiences where that need wasn't met.
Yep.
I love what you're saying. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with want to be belong like that.
No.
We live in a culture, and I think, sometimes we have these sayings online where it says, like, I don't care, I don't need anybody. Oh, no, we do.
Mm-hmm.
We need community. We need our team, our tribe, however what verbiage you want to use.
Yep.
And so just because you have this group of people that you value and they might be crossing a boundary, we don't just X them off and say, I didn't need them anyways. We just need to build a skill in
Yeah.
order to manage these situations. So it's not like
Yes.
an all or nothing. It's what skill, what's missing here. So like generally they're good people. Generally I feel supported, but in these moments, like, I feel disrespected. I don't feel heard, seen, or it's leading me to burnout because I'm at work, whatever situation may be. But if it's overall good, what can I do to make
Right.
this better? Like, we have power, we have choice. We don't have to just sit in these situations and do nothing.
Absolutely. And I love something that you said that jumped right out at me was this distinction of all or nothing. Like, right, like boundaries, setting limits within relationships is not in service of hyper individualism, is not in service of I can do bad all by myself and I don't need anyone, right? Like this is about this skill, this practice is about fostering interdependence as opposed to kind of codependence or rigid hyper individualism. Like Rhea, as you just said, we need people. We are social beings, and some of us are a little more social and a little less social. And co-regulation is something our brains and our nervous systems need and have always needed since birth. And so yeah, I love what you said, and I definitely want to make it clear that like boundaries do not mean I am building these walls around myself that nobody can penetrate unless I give them express permission.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just kind of sharing a little bit more about like the codependency piece and like
Mhm.
interdependence piece. Like interdependence is what we strive for. Like
Right.
we want to be connected to other people and also maintain like our sense of self and like being able to make decisions for ourselves and having that autonomy. But that codependency piece, which we'll get it more into, is like when we're so dependent on another person that it impacts our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings, and us being able to do things for ourselves. Um, and so sometimes people come to therapy just for that, like codependency on like a parent or a friend or even a relationship. And it's kind of inhibiting them from being able to go after the goals that they want or have the life that they want. And so I just wanted to explain that a little bit more too.
Mhm.
Mhm. But one of the things that you were mentioning, Rhea, was burnout. And so I know a lot of us work with other healthcare and helping professionals, and we wanted to get into that today as well.
Uh,
Absolutely.
that burnout is real.
It is.
And again, like I know I've worked in all work environments, and from school systems to mental health agencies to like that, yada 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 yada. And I know in a lot of times we feel as though I work for these people, therefore I can't do or I don't have the ability to do. And I always say you have more choices that you believe. And I'm not saying there's not like bad managers and
Right.
things like that. but there are boundaries that you can set. Like this whole idea that in some places, like I'm just available 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
If you're a nurse, doctor, like there's some professions that go along with it. I can
Yeah.
say that. But there also is like, what does that look like for you
Yeah.
in your career? I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a real estate agent, or I want to be a therapist. And I feel as though I have to do all these things and stretch myself to get clients. And so you're burning yourself out to build your practice or build your business, and you're exhausted because there was never boundaries. You're like, oh, I'll build the
Mhm.
boundaries later. But yet you have created normalcy with these clients that said, I'm going to be available 24 hours a day. And now you're pulling back. And I'm questioning your customer service skills. I'm questioning, like, how we got here. I didn't
Mhm.
make this up. This is what you allowed me to do. And now that we're here because you're burned out, you want me to adjust. Not saying that I can't, but you can start off with boundaries of saying, my hours are between this and this. I'm going to stop checking my emails at this time. It doesn't have to be announced. But if you're worried about whether or not I'm going to lose somebody, put that in have an automatic response. Start at 5 o'clock. It's like, hey, I no longer check emails after this time. Please note, I will respond back at 9 o'clock. We open again, or as soon as possible. Whatever situation may be, that will help some of that anxiety of what would people think of me if you just put it out there, or you
Mhm.
can choose not to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, we're talking about people who run businesses, and we're also talking about people who work for agencies and organizations. And there's ways to set boundaries and self-care intentions at the beginning of the year. So if you're working as an entrepreneur, like making sure that you kind of carve out, okay, what times during the year do I definitely want to make sure that I'm taking time off of work so that I can recharge? Is that going to be once a quarter? Am I going to schedule my work week so that at least one day a week I have time to just kind of regroup and catch up with everything that I need to do? And if you're working at an agency, what are my PTO benefits? I'm not going to let that accumulate all the way to the end of the
Mhm.
year before I actually use those benefits. If I need to use sick leave, I'm going to use that, even if it's for my mental health.
Absolutely.
So just really being intentional with that is super important.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Ray, I love what you said when you acknowledged kind of the vast kind of expanse of careers and working styles and work hours, where there are some careers where you will be on call.
Mhm.
If you're a helping professional, you may have a certain number of days or nights a week where you're on call. How consistent are you with yourself around how many of those on-call hours or shifts you can reasonably be expected of you by your system and
Mhm.
yourself. So there is definitely a lot of gray there where you might have to flex those availability windows, and that can get tricky and kind of set our nervous system aflame almost like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm on call all the time. And so working with that, like when you are not on call, or when you, again, if that's your profession or your calling or your style of work, like when you are not, if your body still feels like you are, then that may be an invitation from your body to find ways to take care of it,
Mhm.
take care of and regulate and self-soothe, and teach your nervous system how to step down out of that level of activation.
I think it's important. No, go ahead, Kelsey.
I was gonna say, I like that you brought that up, Joey, because a lot of times, like, some people will let their cortisol levels, and that's stress. For those who don't
Mhm.
know, the stress hormone gets so high that
Mhm.
it impacts their body and they become sick, and they don't recognize that some of their physical health symptoms are
Yes.
response to not doing the self-care that they need to do and taking that step back. We don't wanna let work become so consuming that we can't, like, eat healthy or exercise or take care of ourselves, and our body gets sick. So we really need to take that time. Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm. I was gonna say some of the same thing. Like just, you know, a lot of I've worked with clients and I hear, well, I always feel this way.
Yeah.
And we have normalized walking around like this, or
Mhm.
feeling tension in our body, feeling having normalized having headaches. Like, yeah, I always get a
Mhm.
headache after
Yeah.
work, or
Yeah.
normalizing feel like I'm so exhausted, I can't get out of bed when it comes to Saturdays. And but those, like you were saying, Joey, those are invitations that our body's saying, hey, this really isn't normal. This,
Yeah.
and also this, we don't have to live this way. And so it's paying attention,
Mhm.
doing like regular body checks.
Mhm.
How, when I did this, how did it make me feel?
Yeah.
When I'm around these people, How does it make me feel?
Mm,
I'm at work leaving these meetings. How does it make me feel? And
yeah.
if I feel tensed up, can I schedule 10 minutes for me to go look, take some deep breathing,
Mhm,
walk around the building? What can
mhm.
I do when I experience these high tense situations in my body and schedule 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes in between before I go on the next?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. It's so important. And even I imagine some folks out there watching this might even be like, I don't even know how my body holds stress. I can't even tell. What? Like, well, and there's almost this disconnect that happens, and um, yeah, just really finding again in maybe a course of therapy, like finding ways to cultivate that connection between awareness and
Mhm.
body of like how like what invitations are my is my body sending me? Because I'm not listening. I have conditioned myself not to listen because of the conditions of my workplace, the environment I'm in. Hustle culture is so real. And some people find it quite empowering, and also it's taken a toll on their body at the same time. Like that hustle, that I got this, I'm doing. It feels good to parts of us, and to the expense of what other parts of us, right?
Mm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I also want to add too, like, of course, we are our own selves and we are individuals, but we're also part of like systems, right? So we're
Yep,
part of families and we're a part of community. And
yep,
we set the stage of wanting to take care of ourselves and to make changes in that way. It impacts our entire system.
yep,
Yep. And people start to notice, like, oh,
yep.
she used to allow stress to like just take over and consume all things, but now
Mhm.
she's like making a change and actually deciding that like this is when I need to take breaks and this is when I need to pour back into myself. And people start to notice that and they can make
Yes,
changes as well, whether you're a parent or a daughter, a sibling, and that spreads. So we got to keep that in mind too.
I love that. I love that again, that fundamental understanding that change is transactional, that if we change something about how we're moving through the world around us might change its response to us. Caveat here for, oh, I'm going to change because I want the environment to change. I'm going to set a boundary because I want the environment to do something different. That's where we get into a little bit of the codependency as opposed to the kind of interdependence of like, I'm going to set an intention to change a limit for myself or set a limit for myself. And if the environment changes its response to me, we'll see and respond accordingly, because that transaction of change is ongoing, right? And so just making sure that we are being real with ourselves, whether that's just in reflection or in a therapy space, about the rationale for setting this limit. Are we setting it for ourselves, or to Rhea, what you were saying earlier, is this some sort of performance? Is this some sort of I'm hoping to be perceived by my environment in such a way that will make them change towards me? I hope that
That's
makes
exactly
sense.
it. No,
Yeah.
that makes so much sense. And I was gonna say, like, when you were saying, I'm doing this in hopes for this person to change. There sometimes we believe that in order for me to have peace, joy is contingent upon someone else.
Yes.
So I'm setting this boundary to make you change. This has nothing to do about the person. You can have peace and joy just even if people stay the same. You
Yeah.
can have whatever it is of your desire of your heart that you're working towards despite what other people are doing. So if my boundary is, hey, I'm not gonna allow you to talk to me this way. I can't change the language that comes out your mouth. I
Yep.
can't change your tone. I can't change anything about you. But what I can do is say I can stop participating in the conversation. I can when that person calls me, I can choose whether or not I'm gonna answer the phone.
Mm,
I can also say I can speak up for myself of like, hey, in tone, I can model because just because they yell, I can still stay at the same level.
yes.
All this has to be intentional, but
Yes.
it's not the person may change because they see like, oh, I don't you're oh, this is new behavior. But the person may dig down and go deeper in who they are. But I still want you to do what's necessary for you in order for you to have the peace that you want in your life.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's a nice kind of segue into maybe an invitation from all of us here, right, to anybody watching, is if this is something that you would like to work on. And there are resources such as psychotherapy where you can learn these skills with a mental health professional who can, again, as Kelsey and Rhaea, you were saying earlier, role play, model, implement skills in the session that can translate to the outside world. And for the purposes of us being here today, an invitation to anybody watching, like, is there an opportunity in the coming week to set a new boundary? Whether maybe it's a really vanilla pudding, really easy boundary. A friend says, "Let's go here for dinner," and here doesn't call to you, and so saying, "Actually, that doesn't sound that great to me. Could we go here instead?" Something new like that, if that's new for you. And that's at least, I think, our invitation to anybody watching today is to practice this skill.
I love that. Like low-hanging fruit.
Yeah,
Start with the barista at Starbucks. My
absolutely.
my coffee was made wrong.
Yeah,
Or, hey, I would love a little bit more sugar.
yeah.
And just start with something to help build confidence. We don't have to go to the hardest thing in the world. Start
Mm-mm.
with something that's like, yep, this was easy. I know it's going to be easy, but it builds momentum.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, or even scheduling that vacation for a couple weeks out or a month out, like, it's taking those small steps of, like, trying to take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Great. Well, I know we had some resources that we wanted to also share. There was the book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. Um, and we also had Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, and we had a couple other ones too.
I think one for me that came up as we were planning this was there are support groups for folks who maybe find themselves in codependent dynamics where there's maybe a lot of enabling or a lot of kind of self-abandonment, kind of going along with behavior that you're not actually okay with because you don't want to lose the relationship. So there's a style of support groups modeled almost after AA, called CODA, or Codependence Anonymous. And you can look on their website or do a quick Google search for meetings near you if that's something that would be helpful. Um,
And I'll co-sign the book that you mentioned, Set
yeah.
Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover Tawib. I hope I pronounced her last name right, but it's a phenomenal book. And she walks you through what boundaries are, how to set them, the different types of boundary, the
Mhm.
discomfort that comes with boundaries. And she also has the workbooks, and she's a
Mhm.
book for kids now too. So it's never too early to start setting boundaries, and she is doing an excellent job with paving
Yeah.
the way.
And teaching the little ones in your life, if you're a parent, how to do it right
Yes.
earlier rather than later. And I'll co-sign Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay C. Gibson. It's a bit of a mouthful of a title. And if you are somebody who has difficulty, anxiety, whatever, around boundary setting, and you have an awareness that that might come from some early childhood relationships with parents or caregivers, it's a really informative, quick, slim read that explains responses that we might have to emotionally immature parents, the styles of emotional immaturity, and also some more about what we've talked about here today with ways to stay in alignment with your true self and set limits when with whether it's with those parents or with other people in your life. And I believe there is a workbook that goes with it that I'm less familiar with, but for some psychoeducation, definitely recommend that book.
Yeah, I found a lot of clients have found the Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents very helpful. It's kind of like a light bulb kind of goes off when you read it, and it really changes a lot of the ways that you see your relationships with your parents and like even other people when you're interacting and having conversations. So definitely
Mm,
recommend.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I know we wanted to share a little bit about ways you can get in touch with us. So, for me, again, my name is Kelsey Wilson. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. My practice name is Gila Psychotherapy. And so you can find me at gilapsychotherapy.com. I'm also on Instagram with the handle Gila Psychotherapy. And so, if you want to schedule a free consultation, you can definitely reach out to me there on my website. And then also have an associate joining who you can do couples therapy with if you're interested in starting services. So definitely reach out.
I love that. And I'm Rhaea Goff. I am the owner of Rhaea Hope. And I just recently got certified in solution-focused therapy. So I help individuals live their best life. And so I love it. And I also am a practice owner, and we have therapists that are multidisciplinary. We have a trauma therapist and a certified financial social worker, a relational therapy, a therapist. And we are adding a therapist to work with mamas who have lost their identity in parenthood and or struggling with the idea of what motherhood looks like for them. You can find us on social media at Rhaea Hope, or you can visit our website at rhaeahope.com.
And I'm Joseph Fruth. I am, again, a clinical social worker and queer psychotherapist licensed to practice in the state of Virginia. I have a virtual private practice, and I will be opening my books for new folks to work with in the new year. So you can find me at josephruthlcsw.com, just like my name is spelled here, hopefully, if you could see it, or at Fruth LCSW on Instagram. Thanks so much for coming today. I hope this was informative, helpful, empowering. Yeah.
Well, thank you all, and we look forward to having you all join the next webinar that we have. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.